You are probably the least productive member of your district court, isn't that right?
I did look in preparation for this hearing, but I didn't compare myself to others.
You haven't seen that you ranked the seventh the worst in the country? Help me understand why you have such an abysmal record in moving cases.
Yoga practice, so I know that you're flexible and balanced. Is that right?
Why such backlog?
Senator, I would look at the quality of my decision-making.
Other judges find a way to do expediency and quality of work.
Why is it a good idea to go to Puerto Rico and to try to get your rich clients prioritized over normal people? I thought you told Senator Kennedy that you resigned from Jones Day over a client that the firm was representing who you didn't like.
Senator, that is not at all what I said.
You didn't resign from Jones Day?
You are probably the least productive member of your district court, isn't that right?
Well, I have not considered myself in those terms, Senator.
Well, let me explain what I mean. You have 125 motions pending that you've declined to decide.
Well,
Let me finish. That's more than any other district judge in the entire Seventh Circuit. In fact, you rank seventh highest nationally, do you not?
I am not familiar with those statistics, Senator Kennedy.
You haven't looked?
I did look in preparation for this hearing, but I didn't compare myself to others.
You haven't seen that you ranked the seventh the worst in the country in terms of making decisions?
You are the first to tell me this. And I think for me, I stress the quality of my decision-making. And as I explained, I came on, I was the first district judge to come on during this administration.
Yeah, but so were all the others. I mean, there have been 68 district judges confirmed in the 117th Congress. In terms of motions pending for more than 6 months, you rank number 3. You all came on at the same time. You all had the same problems with COVID. You're the third worst. You really think of all the other district judges in the Seventh Circuit, you're the one that ought to be promoted based on this record?
Senator, this is something that I've discussed with my fellow judges. Many of us new judges from...
Not you said you'd never looked at these statistics.
I haven't, these particular statistics I am not familiar with. But in terms of new judges, both from the current administration and the former administration, we are quite a collegial bunch. And oftentimes talk about the pressures of a new judge and the way reassignments work in our district, which is that you get, for example, 300 cases.
Yes, ma'am, I understand. I'm familiar with the procedure in federal court. Here's what I'm trying to understand. Why is your record so bad?
Well, I don't view it that way, Senator. When I look at the quality of my decision-making, the feedback that I get from parties,
Of course parties are not going to criticize you. They want you to rule in their favor.
I understand, Senator Kennedy.
I mean, that's just the way it works. Help me understand why you have such an abysmal record in moving cases. I mean, it costs a lot of money to litigate, and people are paying lawyers, and time is money. And of all the district court judges in the Seventh Circuit, you're the worst in terms of moving cases. Why do you think you deserve to be promoted over all of those others?
So, Senator, again, I'm not familiar with the statistics, but I stand by my record and that I give parties what they need. I think, I am regularly in my courtroom. I am regularly issuing decisions. I just came on at a very difficult time where there was a backlog in the courts.
So did everybody else. Let me ask you, when you were a partner in your law firm, you volunteered to write a brief on behalf of the Brady Center. You wrote the brief, and this is what you said. You volunteered for this. You weren't being paid. Is that right?
This was a pro bono case that one of my partners brought in, yes.
You said, quote, assault weapons may be banned because they're extraordinarily dangerous and are not appropriate for legitimate self-defense purposes, close quote. Tell me what you meant by assault weapons.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Just to clarify, there, I was local counsel. Our Supreme...
But you wrote the brief. Tell me what you meant by assault weapons.
Senator Kennedy, actually, I did not write the brief. The brief was written by...
You signed the brief, though, didn't you?
Correct. I signed the
When you
brief.
sign a brief, you're testifying to the court that everything in it is true, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So
they're your words in terms of the court, right?
Well, you're correct, Senator Kennedy. I would never
Tell
sign...
me what you meant by assault weapons.
So I am not a gun expert, and at the time, that brief, I think, was about 10
You
years...
were giving the court advice about, say, ban assault weapons. What is? You told the court you were an expert. Just tell me what you wanted to ban.
Senator, sitting here today, as I said, I did not write that brief. I was local counsel.
Sign the brief.
I understand. At the time
Tell me what you wanted to ban. That's all I want to know, Judge.
I don't remember the exact definition of assault weapons in the ordinance that was at issue.
So you submitted a brief to an appellate brief. You signed it, and you don't know what. And you said abolish assault weapons, and you don't know what you wanted them to abolish.
Senator, at the time that I signed the brief, I read the brief because our Supreme Court required an Illinois bar member to sign the brief. I was not responsible for researching the content.
You were responsible for the brief. You signed it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sitting here today, I do not remember the characteristics of that were cited in the ordinance for the assault weapons ban. It's not an area of practice that I have specialized in. I'm sure 10 years ago I could have answered your question.
And
But
Judge,
sitting here today,
you think you
Senator,
deserve
your
to be
time has
promoted
expired.
with this record?
Senator, I stand by my record. I stand by my record.
I think you have 125 motions pending before you. You were assigned October 3rd, 2022. Some of these motions have been briefed since 2021. You have the third highest number of pending motions of anybody nominated for the district court in this Congress. Some of them involve claims involving lack of adequate health care for people in prison, fire alarm ordinances in your state of Illinois. Why such backlog?
Thank you, Senator. So when I came onto the bench, I was assigned around 300 cases that had existing motions. I've worked really hard to get those motions, I think it was in the hundreds that I inherited, down to a reasonable number, and I'm still working at it. I am very careful with my decision-making, that all my decisions are well-reasoned. I want the parties to understand why they won or why they lost. We've also had a lot of turnover. This is not an excuse, but just an explanation. In my district, within my first 3 months on the bench, 3 judges left for various reasons, which meant more reassigned cases. So I also came on at the end of COVID, and so there were backlogs, and so I had cases set for trial that were older that really should have been tried during the COVID period, but were not for obvious reasons.
Well, it has nothing to do, you didn't want to rule on these things. When did you know you were going to be nominated for the circuit court?
So I learned this at some point late January, early February.
Okay. When you were at the law firm after do you remember issuing a statement about the death of Mr. George Floyd and others who had been killed?
Senator Graham.
Breonna Taylor.
Our partnership approved a statement, yes.
Well, in it, you accused President Trump and others of being divisive. What did you mean by that?
So, Senator, that was a statement that was put up on our website that was approved by the partnership.
But you wrote it?
I did not write it, Senator. It was written by one of my junior partners.
Was it under your name?
It was not under my name per se. It was on the firm website approved by the partnership of which I was part.
Who instigated the statement? Was it you or somebody else?
It was my junior partner.
Okay. So did the junior partner come to you and ask you to do the statement? How did that happen?
The junior partner, we would have regular partnership meetings during the pandemic.
Whose idea was it?
It was not my idea, Senator. It was my junior partner's idea.
Okay. Did you embraced it, all right? That statement, you stand behind that statement?
So, Senator, that statement I view as political speech, which
Well,
I'm precluded
the question
from.
is, do you stand behind that statement?
Senator, I think it would be inappropriate for me to opine on the content of that statement as a sitting judge.
As part of your record, as part of the way you think. I'm running over here, but I mean, it was put up for the whole world to see, and it was pretty inflammatory. I agree with that. But I mean, was that your feelings then, and is that your feelings now?
Senator, again, I didn't write the statement.
Thank you.
And I also know that you have done more sun salutations than any United States senator in your yoga practice. So I know that you're flexible and balanced. Is that right?
Thank you, Senator. I think that's true, yes.
Okay.
What does that mean here, endeavor to rule? And what more would you need to rule on a case of that relative simplicity in less than 3.5 years?
Thank you, Senator. So do you happen to know the name of that case?
We can get that for you.
Okay. So there is a triage process that I follow in my chambers. We're generally working on the oldest motions. And I think reading what you just wrote, listening to what you just read to me, I think this means it's in the immediate pipeline, meaning that it's in the top, 10 things that are immediately going to be issued. Now, I am a very involved judge. I edit every single thing that goes out of my chambers, and so oftentimes and I go back and forth with my law clerks on drafts. It's not sometimes the most rapid process,
But does this case ring a bell? Do you recognize?
If I knew the name, it's probably, with all my law clerks, we have our list of things that we're working on, our pipeline, which has to be based somewhat on chronology. So you mentioned November 2021. I wasn't even on the bench yet. And so that came to me almost a year old.
Right.
And that wasn't even one of the oldest.
It was fully ripe before you became a judge. And
a year before I became a judge.
And I understand that.
I've looked at the positions that Demand Justice has taken, and one of their priorities has been to expand the Supreme Court. So did you speak with Mr. King about expanding the Supreme Court?
No, Senator Blackburn. My conversations with Mr. King were limited to getting advice and guidance on how the nomination process worked. It was quite opaque to me at that point, and so he provided guidance.
Do you support increasing the number of justices on the Supreme Court?
That is a matter that I am precluded from opining on under the canons. But I think if you look at my record, I've never taken that position.
I don't think you're precluded on giving an opinion as to whether or not you think that the Supreme Court should be expanded. And Demand Justice has suggested that adding 4 justices would bring, and I quote them, restore balance and integrity. So do you think that there's a particular number of justices that should be added to the Supreme Court?
Senator Blackburn, I have never taken any position on this. I don't think it's appropriate for me to opine on it.
Okay, Demand Justice claims that the Supreme Court is, and I'm quoting them, unethical, unaccountable, and out of control. Do you share that assessment?
Senator, I don't have a relationship with Demand Justice. I've only spoken to Mr. King on a couple occasions several years ago. I'm not familiar with their positions, but I don't associate myself with those.
Obviously, you respected him, or you wouldn't have called him and gotten advice from him. So that is what concerns me, that you would go to a far left-leaning group to get advice on how to come before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator Kennedy talked with you about your ranking, and you are, as he told you, number one at having the biggest backlog in the Seventh Circuit, and you're number 7 nationwide with outstanding motions. And the thing, as I looked at this, Judge, what is very curious to me is how you're so out of step with the other district judges as far as managing your time and moving cases forward and actually making decisions. I looked at the alarm detection systems case, and you've had a fully briefed motion since September of 22. And then the Palladino Wells Fargo case, you've had since November of 22. So I understand how time-consuming the work is. I understand, and let me tell you, we do a lot of reading. We do a lot of prep work for our hearings. But I find it interesting that when you have a fully briefed case in front of you, you cannot come to a decision. So what hinders you from being able to arrive at decisions when you have everything you need to make the decision?
Thank you, Senator. I wouldn't say that I'm hindered in my decision-making. In fact, if you look at my record, I am a fan of ruling on the record. And so I've done decided many motions on the record at hearings over the course of several hours. So I'm not hindered.
District Judge, let's talk about that, because I went in and looked at your record, and I noted the fact that you've only presided over one civil trial to verdict in your nearly 2 years on the bench. One trial, just one. And that, combined with the fact that you had tried only 3 cases when you were in private practice, leads me to question your fitness for the court. So how can you expect us to confirm you to the circuit court when in 2 years you've presided over one civil trial and your backlog is larger than nearly everyone else? What would qualify you?
Senator, I would look at the quality of my decision-making.
Other judges find a way to do expediency and quality of work. Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I want each of you, the prosecutors, to tell me how you see the role of public defender and how you will, as a judge, make certain that that continues to be a critical component. And I'll start with you, and we'll go to the right. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I do recognize the important role that public defenders play in the criminal justice system. Although I have spent the majority of my career working as a prosecutor, while in private practice, I did work as a criminal defense attorney as well. And from that perspective, I gained, a particular appreciation for the difficulty that criminal defense attorneys, the particular difficulties that criminal defense attorneys face in that work. I will also say that as a prosecutor, I've taken an oath as an AUSA to uphold the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And for me, that has meant safeguarding the constitutional rights of defendants. And I take that part of my role incredibly seriously. If I were so fortunate as to be confirmed, I would use both those experiences, my time admittedly brief, but still significant in my mind as a criminal defense attorney, and my work as a prosecutor balancing the needs to advocate the United States while also safeguarding the rights of the defendants.
Thank you.
Senator, I share Ms. Alexakis' view on this also. I have always seen it as being within the interests of the United States to uphold every amendment to the Constitution, including the 6th Amendment to the Constitution. And so I have been privileged to count among my colleagues federal public defenders. And I have worked with federal public defenders on several large initiatives, including ensuring the right for defendants to have counsel, even in situations where perhaps under statutes or the law they would not be entitled to them. So for example, I collaborated with the Federal Public Defender's Office to draft a general order that allowed for representation for defendants bringing claims under the First Step Act for compassionate release, and most recently under the Sentencing Guidelines retroactive amendment.
Thank you very much. Judge?
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator. I share my fellow nominees' comments. I know we're short on time. I'll just add that as a former federal prosecutor, I represented the United States in almost 1,500 matters. And in every single one of those cases, I was thankful every single time when there was a defense attorney who appeared in the case, competent, ready to go. I always felt as a prosecutor that it was fundamental that a defendant's rights were well protected.
You represented these hedge funds in particular during a debt crisis that Puerto Rico had in 2017. Do you remember that?
Yes, Senator.
So Puerto Rico had a debt crisis in 2017. Your clients had bought a series of bonds and held quite a lot of money in bonds, if I'm correct. And it's $1.4 billion. Does that sound right?
Yes, Senator.
Of course, other people had bought bonds too. Normal people, everyday people had bought bonds. And when the debt crisis kicked off, the courts froze all of the assets, all of Puerto Rico's assets, to make sure that everybody got their fair share and was paid out in accordance with the law, and that normal people who bought bonds would get their fair share, right? I mean, I've got it right so far?
Yes, Senator.
So you, however, you, on behalf of your clients, you invented a novel claim. You filed a lawsuit under the takings clause. Is that right?
That's correct, Senator.
So you argued that the government was stealing from the hedge funds by freezing all of the funds. And if they pursued that course of action and didn't give your clients all of their money first, then they would have violated the U.S. Constitution. Is that right?
That's not quite correct, Senator.
Why was it a good idea? Why represent all of these hedge funds trying to get billions of dollars out of Puerto Rico when other everyday bondholders are left to pick up the slack? You dragged this thing out for years. I mean, you went back and forth to the circuit court. Other hedge funds then followed your lead. They thought that was terrific argument, super inventive. So then they did the same thing. So then other hedge funds piled in. The bankruptcy went on and on. Puerto Rico was forced to institute serious austerity measures, much to the detriment of their citizens, average people who don't have money for hedge funds. Why is it a good idea to go to Puerto Rico and to try to get your rich clients prioritized over normal people in a way that seriously impoverished, if I might say, the citizens of the island?
Senator, the legal profession is bound by a code of ethics that I think is incredibly important and that I am proud to adhere to in every case. My clients in that case...
Take from the rich or take from the poor to give to the rich? Is that the code of ethics?
Senator, Jones Day was retained in that case to represent a group of clients. Along with my colleagues, I made the best possible arguments.
Well, wait. Are you saying it wasn't voluntary? You represented them, right? You were lead counsel, I thought. Were you lead counsel?
Senator, I was not lead counsel. I was one of many lawyers who handled that litigation.
And it was involuntary? You were assigned, or you chose to do it? You did it voluntarily, didn't you?
Senator, those hedge funds were a client of the firm. I was asked to join the team and work on that matter.
But you did. Okay. My question is why? Why is that? Why is it a good idea? I mean, you can say no.
Senator, my colleagues and I at Jones Day in that case made the best possible argument.
Well, I know, and I listen. I don't doubt I'm not questioning your talent. I understand why they wanted to hire you. Your talent's considerable. I'm just wondering why you thought it was important to deploy it on behalf of these hedge funds to the detriment of everyday citizens who were bearing the cost. and you invented a very novel, I mean, it was very novel. Listen, I give you credit. And everybody else thought so too. That's why all the other rich players got in and said, we want to do that, we want to do that, and drug it out for years. I'm just wondering why you thought that was a good idea.
Senator, Jones Day was retained to represent
I heard that the
those
first
clients.
time. I'm just wondering why you thought it was a good idea. You could use your considerable talents in any number of cases, ways, means, and methods. You could have said no to representing these clients. You didn't, obviously. In fact, you vigorously defended them to the point of inventing this novel theory, which was quite successful for your very lucrative clients. I'm just wondering why.
Senator, I have represented a number of clients over the course of my career. I have represented the government. I have represented clients.
So you don't have any problem with this? You think this is a good idea? You stand by it?
Senator,
No
my
regrets?
job in that representation was to vigorously represent my clients, which I did.
Sure, but we'd established, I think, a second ago, I thought you told Senator Kennedy that you resigned from Jones Day over a client that the firm was representing who you didn't like.
Senator, that is not at all what I said.
You didn't resign from Jones Day?
Senator, I did not resign from Jones Day because of any particular representation.
Oh, so it wasn't a moral, you had no moral quandaries?
Absolutely not, Senator. I
You
left
had no moral quandaries with any of the cases at Jones Day? That's your testimony?
Senator, I left the firm in January of 2021 because I was offered an opportunity to return to public service. It's an
Okay.
opportunity the firm supported and that I took.
You had no quandaries with them representing in the Trump litigation? You had no
Senator,
problem with that? That's your testimony?
Senator, I did not leave my firm because of that representation.
You had
I
no
left
moral
my
problem with
firm,
it.
Senator, I left the firm months later because I received an opportunity to
You
return
had no problem
to
with
public
that, and you had no
service.
problem representing the bondholders. So your testimony is you're happy to represent anybody who comes your way. Donald Trump, you bet. The bondholders, you bet. Hedge funds, you bet. Whoever. That's your testimony? I just want to make sure I got it right.
Senator, throughout my career, I have adhered to the code of ethics that all lawyers are bound by.
Well, sure, but the code of ethics allow you to make money from anybody. Listen, you can choose your clients. I'm not accusing you of any ethical violations at all. I'm not. I'm just trying to figure out why you thought it was important to have these hedge funds as your clients, and if you had any moral quandaries. And your testimony is you didn't have any moral quandaries, which is fine, but I just wonder if that's the best judgment.
Senator, throughout my career, I have represented corporate clients. I have represented
Clearly.
criminal defendants. I have represented the government. Throughout my career, I am proud that I have
Want to say anything to the
fulfilled.
people of Puerto Rico while we're here?
Please let her finish the answer. Your time has expired. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Durbin. Throughout my career, I have represented many different clients. I am proud that in every representation, I have made the best possible arguments for all of my clients.
Do you want to say anything to the people of Puerto Rico?
And you were representing a party, your firm was, and you were, in a post-election challenge to Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Pennsylvania Supreme Court, of course, extended the filing deadline for absentee ballots in the president's election, and that was challenged as being unconstitutional under both the state and the federal constitution. Am I right?
Yes, Senator.
And Jones Day was handling that case, right?
That's correct.
And you were a partner at Jones Day, is that right?
That's correct, Senator.
Okay. And who was your client in that case?
The firm's client was the Pennsylvania GOP, Senator.
Well, it's your client too, right?
Correct, Senator. I was not the lawyer in that case, but yes, Senator.
But you were going to share in the profits made from the bills paid by the Pennsylvania GOP, right?
Senator, it was a firm client. I was a partner at the firm.
And you were going to share in the money, right?
Correct, Senator.
Okay. And in a call where you and some of your partners were talking about the case, this is what you said about your client who's paying you. You said, this is according to an August 25, 2022 article. You said, quote, "This lawsuit was brought for no other reason than to deprive poor people of the right to vote," close quote. You said that, didn't you?
Senator, those were not my words. I do not know who provided that quote to the reporter.
You gave it to the reporter, didn't you?
Senator, I never spoke to the reporter or anyone in the media about the meeting in question, and I'll tell you why. As a partner at Jones Day, all partners are bound by a confidentiality obligation to the firm, and that meeting was an internal, confidential partners meeting.
Yeah, but
I never spoke to the media about it, and those were not my words, Senator.
This is a violation of about 90 127 provisions of the Code of Ethics, isn't it?
Senator, that's why I never spoke to that reporter, and those were not my words. I do not know who provided that quote to the reporter.
What did you mean? Who was trying to deprive poor people of the right to vote? Who were you referring to when you said that?
Senator, as I said, those were not my words.
Oh, you never said that. You did not.
Senator, those were not my
So
words.
if we deposed your partners on that call, they would say, no, she never said it.
Senator, I am telling you here today under oath that those were not my words. I never spoke to them.
If we deposed your partners and put them under oath, they would say, no, she never said that?
Senator, I can't tell you what someone else would say under oath. I can tell you under oath that those were not my words. I never spoke to the media about that call.
And you think in light of this, you're qualified to be a federal judge?
Senator, I never spoke to the
You
media.
say that about a client?
Senator, as I said, those were not my words, and I never spoke to the media about the meeting in question. I take my obligations, ethical and otherwise, incredibly
Counsel,
seriously.
you said that, didn't you?
Senator, I did not say those words.
So the New York Times got it wrong?
Senator Butler.